Yeah, I think it's the interesting part with powerlifting though, where you don't have to be the biggest guy in the room to be the strongest guy in the room. And
Right.
it's kind of fun sometimes, walking in and, you look like a normal person. You can fit into a normal shirt, a medium or a large or whatever it may be, but knowing that you're the strongest. You walk into the gym and hey, there's nobody that's going to out squat me today or whatever it may be, in a commercial gym setting anyways. And just knowing, what, I'm here for the performance. I'm not here to be a shiny car. I'm the big motor in the car with 2 turbochargers and a supercharger and 2 tanks of nitrous.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say we know where Canada is. British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then where is Prince George? Well, we know a big city in British Columbia called Vancouver. We are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers. That puts us in the center of British Columbia, north-south, east-west. That's where we are. Today we got a very interesting guest on our show. His name is Matt Taylor, and Matt has a very interesting story about self-confidence, pursuing something, never giving up, staying the course, and success will follow. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
So, where are you located, Matt?
So I'm actually just based in Vancouver, that big city you were talking about.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that. Okay, welcome to Prince George. So you live in Vancouver then, BC?
Yeah, just outside, just in the suburbs. But yeah, correct.
So which part of the suburbs?
I'm in Coquitlam.
Oh, Coquitlam. Okay. So there we go. Did you have snow today?
It did. I woke up, I looked outside, I was like, I did not put snow tires on.
I saw it. I was watching the news this morning and said, snow. We have also a place on the island. So I said to my wife, did you have snow? She said, no. I said, well, Vancouver did. Anyway, Matt, tell us a little bit about your background. Now we know where you live. Were you born in British Columbia?
So I was born in Richmond Hill, which is basically the equivalent of Coquitlam to Toronto.
Right.
So the other big city.
Okay, and so how long have you been in British Columbia?
Actually, 10 years this year. So I moved in April 1st of 2014.
Okay.
My friends thought I was joking, but I moved on April 1st, and so I said, yeah, it wasn't a joke, guys.
Why did you move? Why did you? Toronto is or Ontario is a nice province, big province, lots of activity. Why did you move?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. So I used to cook professionally in fine dining. I was working, by the time I was 18, I was cooking professionally in one of the top 5 restaurants in Toronto, a place called Terra.
Okay.
And if you've ever talked with anybody who's worked in hospitality or cooking specifically, it's a bit of a crazy career. There's exactly no money in it. The hours are absolute insanity. And the career progression path is, we'll say, rocky at best, right? I had these big dreams of, starting my own restaurant. I was very inspired by, I think, really of the era, around 2006, 2008. A lot of the Food Network cooking shows and those celebrity chefs and all that had come out. And that's what kind of drew me into that world. It seemed very cool. My dad is a serial entrepreneur. And so I have a little bit of that, like, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do my own thing in me. And I got a couple years into it and very quickly found, 80 to 90 hour weeks working for an average wage of, I don't know, $5 an hour or something like that is good luck starting your own restaurant with something like that. Like I did the math and I was like, I don't really understand how this checks out. And just ended up basically, long story short, I got super burnt out to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. All of my passion for cooking is gone. I'm showing up. I'm a shell of myself. And I was still, lifting at that point because I had cooked from I think I started cooking professionally in 2011 and I was done by 2014. I
So,
just, all of my passion was gone. It became a job. And so I stopped, and I took a couple months to just recenter myself, and then decided, you know what, let's change the scenery. I moved out here and I started coaching powerlifting.
so how old were you then when you decided to move?
Um, I was I was 18, so I turned 19 in later that year. But at the time that I moved in April, I was 18.
Quite a decision to make at a very, very young age, already having a bit of a career and being a cook or working for a very, very well known restaurant. Now, the other challenges
Yeah.
that you had are with weight. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So the way that I got into cooking, I basically got into cooking and lifting weights at
Oh,
around the same time. Not very good at sports. Like, I didn't get the ball. We'll put it at pick class and gym class, like very stereotypical that. Not for lack of effort. Like, I had tried a lot of different sports. My parents had me in baseball and did soccer for a season. I kind of did a season of just about every sport and found, yeah, I'm just as bad at all of these. And ended up becoming, a little, I wouldn't say fat, but a little husky. Around '06, something around there, and kind of just came home one day and was like, I really don't like this. And I started, just being smart about my food. I had less snacks. This information was not magical. Eat less, burn more. Okay, cool. And I did more cardio, but, no real knowledge. Keep in mind, I'm 11, 12 at this point. And I got pretty skinny. But the interesting part in reflecting on this is I locked into the numbers really hard. And I started looking at the scale. I was like, oh, I'm in control of this number. I can do exactly what I want here. And you'll notice that theme with business. You'll notice that theme with lifting weights. It's like, oh, I can control what happens to this number if I just change these other things. And I basically ended up I'm 5'9", but I ended up down at 99 pounds by the time 2014 rolled, or 2008 rolled around. And body was starting to shut down on me, starting to get to the point where the doctors were like, hey, you should, chill out a little bit here, stop trying to lose weight. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm not fat. I'm in control. This is wonderful. And then I had this one gym class that, like, one session in gym class that stood out to me where we were doing, they're not called suicides. It's the beep test where you have to run to the end of the gym and back, and you do it a certain number of times.
Right.
And I got floored. Like, I had obviously no muscle on my frame at 99 pounds. There was no motor, right? No performance.
Skin and bones.
Yeah, a strong breeze would have probably taken me out.
Right.
And my gym teacher came up to me. He's like, hey, Matt, obviously you're not in the best shape of your life here. And I don't even remember what the rest of the statement was. But I'm sitting here like, I've done hours a week of cardio at this point. I'm finally not pudgy. What do you mean not in the best shape of your life? And I wasn't happy with my performance, but having that totally unsolicited thing knock me down, here we are 16, 18 years later, and I still talk about this, right?
So
And I walked in that day.
that was the key that penetrated you in terms of saying there is an issue here. And you hadn't really recognized that up to that point, although you were skin and
Not really.
bones for all intents and
It
purposes.
wasn't so much that. It was more that, I'm sure that you can probably recognize this as an entrepreneur, like, having somebody tell you what to do is maybe not your favorite thing, right?
Right.
And having somebody make an unsolicited observation about me with something that I had personally been feeling, oh, I'm being really successful with this, and just having the comment go completely the other way, it kind of ticked me off. And I went home that day and was like, well, I'll show him. And I pretty much just went on Google and said, how do I get a bunch of muscle? Like, how do I get jacked? That's what's going to get me into shape. And I went onto bodybuilding.com and I found, some 5-day routine and started working out the next day. And then a couple weeks later, I was like, I really don't like the physique thing. This is not my favorite thing. It just mentally didn't it wasn't as interesting to me, but I loved the numbers.
Right.
Surprise, surprise, right?
Right. Right.
And fast forward a couple of years, turns out there's a sport called powerlifting where you can compete with the numbers, and here
So,
we are.
how much did you weigh then physically? Your
So when I
weight
started,
of
I was
your
about,
body? Yeah.
yeah, so I was about 99 pounds when I started lifting, and it was a really slow gain because, of course, there's that control element where you're like, well, I don't want to get fat,
Right.
all these additional layers to things. But I probably averaged out around 10 pounds of gain a year or so for the first couple of years. It wasn't very fast.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, why did you focus on powerlifting? Because it looks to me like I'm into training. I'm 84 years old, so I started fairly late working on the gym. Actually, when I was 69, I started going to the gym and started really training hard. And, so I've been involved in powerlifting, mainly supporting it as a company, but it's not something that I would do. I like what I'm doing, but what attracted you to powerlifting? Because it's not an easy sport, and especially
Mhm.
not with the kind of weights that you were doing or wanted to do, and to become very successful takes a lot and a lot of training because technique extremely important, and obviously physical fitness extremely important. So, what what motivated you to go in that direction?
Yeah. So the thing with I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. So for me, when I started with the more bodybuilding style of training, right? Very focused on, okay, how big could I get my biceps or my chest or whatever, muscle gain, right?
Right,
What I found was that there was a couple things that happened. One is it still had me very preoccupied with what everybody else thought, right? Which is okay, fine. But the other thing, which was I think more significant, is I was never good at sports in my life. Like I had never been picked first in gym class. Nobody passed me the ball. All these things, and then suddenly I was in control of something very tangible with my own progression. And I started squatting at 75 pounds or something like that. And then, 80 pounds, 85. And that progression and being entirely in control of that was the coolest thing because to me, it felt like, hey, I've never been an athlete in my life. And suddenly here's this thing I'm doing that's indicative of athletic success, I think was probably the best way to put it. And in talking with a lot of the lifters that I work with and that my team works with now, that feeling with powerlifting is not something that I think I'm alone with, where it kind of lets them be the athlete they never were, where there's this untapped potential. Like maybe you weren't great at running, maybe you weren't great at shooting a basketball really accurately, maybe you're not even gifted to have the world's biggest biceps, but you're able to squat 30 pounds more than you did last month or last week or last year. And that progression is the coolest thing because they can go and then compete in something and experience such a cool community, like one of the most supportive sports communities I've ever seen in my life. And it basically lets them be that athlete that they never were up until that point.
yeah, we had championships here in Prince George several years for powerlifting, and my company, the Brink group of companies, supported that for quite a number of years. And I know quite a few of the athletes that are involved there. They are very committed to their sport. So I'm just find it interesting trying to figure out that what it does, it allows you to be solo. You can set your own goals and then work towards objectives that you have in terms of numbers, and then compete again against others, but not direct, but indirectly in terms of the criteria that is measured as a powerlifter. Is that something that, am I correct in that would be attractive to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, you can't, just like any other sporting event, you can't really control who else shows up, but you
Right,
can control what you bring to the competition,
right,
right? If I'm in there and I'm training at my best and I'm being consistent and I've set projections and I've seen improvements on my lifts, okay, I know I'm showing up at my best. And that's as good as it's going to be. That's as competitive as I will be on the day, right? From there, I think that's fairly accurate with more open competitions like the beginner ones. And then as you build up to a provincial or a state or even a national level, that field becomes overall more competitive where you know who's going to show up a little bit more,
okay.
just simply because of the criteria you need to qualify in the first place.
So you don't look overly large or muscular. So are you, or am I not seeing you correctly? Or
So a couple of things there. So I weigh about 20 pounds less now than at my heaviest when I was competing. So competing up until this point, I've always competed in the 83 class, which is like 183 pounds for anybody who's doing imperial. I weigh closer to 74. I ended up dropping a weight class basically over COVID. So around 74 kilos now. So I'm 164, 165 pounds most days. But I hold a lot of my muscle in my legs. My upper body's never really been super huge, and that's, it is what it is. But um, yeah, I think it's the interesting part with powerlifting though, where you don't have to be the biggest guy in the room to be the strongest guy in the room, and
right,
it's kind of fun sometimes. Walking in and you look like a normal person, you can fit into a normal shirt, a medium or a large or whatever it may be, but knowing that you're the strongest. You walk into the gym and hey, there's nobody that's going to out squat me today, or whatever, maybe in a commercial gym setting, anyways. Um, and just knowing, what, I'm here for the performance. I'm not here to be a shiny car. I'm the big motor in the car with 2 turbochargers and a supercharger and 2 tanks of nitrous.
it reminds me, Matt, of I watch YouTube quite a bit, and I know there's one guy that is the cleaned up man in the gym, and he watches
Oh,
these
yeah.
guys that are powerlifting, and he says, "Oh my goodness, can I move it?" And he picks it where these other guys are going like, "Oh my God, they have 6 blades on it or whatever," and on each side. And he just picks it up with one hand and he just walks it away. And they say, "What the huh?" So
Yeah. I love Anatoly. He's so funny.
yeah.
But
So
that's the
that's,
feeling I'm talking about, right? That shock of like, wait, you did what?
he doesn't look big. He doesn't. So what's the key to you and guys like him? Where is the strength? Is it in the legs? Or is it in the back? Or is it in the mind? Or where is it? What
I
makes
mean,
them?
everything really. So the way that I look at bodybuilding versus powerlifting, right? So if you're training for muscle gain to be, very big, fundamentally you have to get stronger to gain muscle, right? Like you're familiar with this idea of progressive overload, and if you did
I'm just going
100
to
kilos for
show
10 reps,
I'm
yeah,
just going to show my book here again for the people watching us. I showed it to you before we started, but
yeah,
so I'm at 84. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America, but I don't do it for size, but for fitness and being in good shape. And I compete. I qualified for the Arnold's and the Nationals in 2018, and I'm trying to compete again in 2025 when I'm 85. So my theory is that everything is possible at any age. It's quality of life for one, and then commitment to training. Is after this podcast is over, I'm at the gym, so I'm very regularly training in the gym, but not to become major big, but in very, very good shape.
Right. So are you competing in the bodybuilding division specifically?
Correct, yeah.
I didn't mean that. Okay, got it.
Yeah, bodybuilding and physique.
Gotcha. Yeah, so
Yeah,
you're looking for the shape and balance and
correct.
everything with that as well. Yeah. Yeah, so from a philosophy standpoint, I mean, I think there's three main ways you can look at working out and lifting weights, if you will, right? You've got the powerlifting side of things, you've got the bodybuilding side of things, and then you've got more just general fitness, right? You're not trying to be the strongest person ever, you're not trying to be the biggest person ever, you're just trying to be in good shape.
Yeah.
Right? And what's interesting is, in all three of those, you have to be lifting weights, but it's how you pursue them and what the lens is that you look at them through, if you will. So with bodybuilding, the goal is you want to, in competitive bodybuilding, where you're trying to be big and very muscular and all this. With bodybuilding, you're trying to be basically as big as possible. However strong you have to be to get there, that's okay. But all of your decision making is basically going to prioritize around how can I gain the most muscle. And past a certain point, getting stronger is probably not going to increase how much muscle mass you have, in the sense of taking your 1 rep max deadlift from 2.5 times body weight to 3 times body weight. It's probably not going to change how much muscle you're able to carry on your frame. You're probably just going to be stronger, right?
Right.
But on the powerlifting side of things, if your lens is, I'm going to have a set amount of muscle and body weight, and my goal is to be as strong as possible and finally tune that to be basically to be able to move the most amount of weight given a set body weight. That's why you have weight classes in powerlifting, right? And then with fitness, your goal is basically just having, I would look at it more almost as a process where you're trying to, but you're not really going to go and try to push anything to an absolute max, because you're not trying to optimize for muscle gain. You're not trying to optimize for strength. You're just trying to be generally in shape and working out consistently. And, the flavor of that will change with what stage of life you're in. If you're in your mid 20s and you're trying to be generally fit, you might be a little bit more aggressive and biased, maybe a little towards powerlifting or a little towards bodybuilding. And then as you age, I'm sure you can relate to this as well, you're probably a bit less aggressive than you were when you were 70 with how you approach things and your decision-making process on how much you do or how aggressively you try to progress, or your workloads, or if you're like, I'm not sure about this weight, if you try it, right?
Yeah, so the way
And
I look at,
so,
yeah, I agree with you, Matt. So the way I look at it, for me at least, is that at a certain point in life, I had a close call in terms of, and that's usually what happens to people as they get older. Something happens. I had a case of diverticulitis that is a rupture actually of the colon, that very dangerous in the sense of all the toxins. So it motivated me to, that was in 2008, and I was then already 68. And so I came that close to not making it through the operation. And so it motivated me for a couple of things. My wife is vegetarian, and I didn't listen as well as I could and should have at times. I wasn't abusive, but not as well. So it kind of gave me the motivation that I have to be more serious about diet. And then the other part is that I was doing what a lot of people do, not only my age, but also younger, is every year, at the end of the year, we make decisions to do this, that, and then we're going to buy a membership to the gym, and then 2 weeks after the new year, we can find 100 reasons why we're too busy to go to the gym. And so I had been doing that all along the way until this happens, and I came that close to not making it, and I knew I had to get serious about it. And so I then got a trainer, started working with the trainer, and then after I had been training for about 6 years, the one day somebody came up to me and say, "Hey John, have you ever thought about competing? I said, me? Really? Yeah. He said, I thought, okay. So I started working with my trainer, competing, bodybuilding, and physique. And so that was in 2016, 2017, 2018. And I started competing 2017, Northern BC, was second in bodybuilding, third in physique. That qualified me for the provincials. Came in third in physique, second in bodybuilding, qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. So it motivated me to go to the gym, not so much to come out like this, but it gave me a motivation and a goal. And so then obviously COVID happened. Then I slowed down a bit, but I still stayed fit. And then now again, I've been working since COVID actually, for the last 2 years on getting ready again for competing, bodybuilding and physique, probably in Victoria in next April. That hopefully qualifies me for the nationals and then again for the Arnolds. So
So you sound like you know your why.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
Yeah. And so for you, your why is you had, if I understood that correctly, it's like you had this near death experience, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that being able to know, okay, here's why, very topical. If you can figure that out, the motivation becomes so easy. Those excuses that come up 2 weeks after you start disappear because they're so insignificant relative to, in your case, dying, right? Or possibly dying.
And the other part about it, Matt, is then you start to like going to the gym. I always now, and I've been training for the last 15 years, but I enjoy going to the gym and I enjoy pushing up. And I always, for me, because I'm not trying to be important, but I have 10 different companies and I do a lot of other stuff. And I work by appointments, and if I have an appointment, I make sure that I'm there for the commitment that I make. And so it motivates me. Then once you start pushing at any age, and you will be an expert in that part as well, then you have to get the correct guidance, especially when you're pushing to maximize and improve your ability and to get good training, because otherwise, you create injuries that are difficult to get over, or to stay on course and keep improving is very, very important. Hence, that's what I'm doing now, and I enjoy it. The other part about it is that diet extremely important. So what I follow as much as I can, I like sunshine, vitamin D. I like sleep, at least 8 hours, 7.5 to 8 hours a day. I then need quality of health diet. I'm very careful about the diet that I follow, and then the other one is exercise, obviously, and so that's what I do, and hence that's quality of life for me first and foremost. But I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy going to the gym. I enjoy getting ready for competition, and it gives me a goal, and it makes me feel good. And it's
Yeah.
quality. It's age is just a number. It's quality of life that is important at any age.
Yeah. You'd mentioned the competition keeps you focused. I think for me, it's the same thing. When I don't have a goal, I get lost in the process and I get very bored.
Right.
And similar for me, I hear a lot of people's why for their lifting can vary, right? Some people it's a health thing. Some people it's just having something that they can focus on that's entirely for them, so that they can show up to their family and be the best father, their best husband, their best whatever it may be. Um, and there's a whole host of reasons you can see that's like why somebody would lift. But what I find interesting is you'll have some people where they really enjoy the process and their why is very obvious for them. For other people, like I almost need the process to have a why. So as soon as that competition date's on the calendar, I'm instantly more focused. I'm 5% more consistent with my sleep, 5% more consistent with my diet, 5% more consistent with my stretching, and the training is easy for me. It's really not, it's such a habit at this point, I crave it. But if you can have that sort of piece where you have a date and it's like, I'm working hard to this point to get the best result here, and there's going to be people that will do better than me if I don't try really hard and give it 100%. Suddenly you focus in on everything, and then all the things that lead to that quality of living. Having good sleep feels really good. The mental clarity you get from that, the emotional stability, all those things are fantastic. Having a good diet, wow, my energy is really good when I'm not eating McDonald's all day. Great, right? But
Exactly.
all of those decisions, sleeping well and eating well, at least to me, can feel so trivial when they're not feeding into anything tangible for performance. If I'm just eating well to feel good, and I'm just sleeping well to be attentive at work, I kind of don't care. I'll
Right.
drink more coffee and have more energy drinks, and I'll make it through the day. That's not very sustainable, but that's kind of what I'm going to end up doing. Whereas if I have that goal, like I'm trying to be the best at lifting right now, and there's all these things I have to do that are very good for me: sleeping well, eating well, managing my stress, all that are going to let me perform even better here, but also have these amazing impacts on my quality of life elsewhere. It's so cool because I don't have to force myself to eat well and sleep well and go to bed on time and manage my stress because I want to, because this performance goal is in the back of my head the whole time as soon as that competition date is there.
Exactly. So if you compete now, do you do it for yourself in your own setting, or do you go to the gym, or what does your regime apply in terms of staying in shape or working towards the next goal? What do you do?
So the last 6 years, so a little bit before COVID, um, up until now, or like 2024 now, have been quite frankly very challenging for me, in that I haven't actually competed since 2018.
Okay.
Because so basically I competed in 2018. I had my best total to date. I was like this close to hitting a new provincial record, and that close to winning provincials as well that year, actually. And then basically immediately after, I just had a whole set of, right? So collarbone the next day. I don't remember if it was the next day or 2 days later, but I broke this collarbone. I've got this nice little bump there now. And then as I was getting back into lifting 2 months later, 3 months later, I'd started to have these really bad like inflammation flare ups. Like I'd never really had anything like this in my life. I'd had injuries and stuff, but not anything like this inflammation that was going on, because it felt like my whole body. And it took until maybe 2022 to get any kind of an answer. But it ended up being an autoimmune condition, so I can't fix it. But basically, for me, um, I didn't know it in 2018, but 2018 would be the last time I'd compete in full power and do competition squats and competition deadlifts. There's something specific about the back squat and a barbell deadlift for me at this point that um, it just causes a lot of flare ups and a lot of issues. And that was very challenging for me to accept, because up until that point, you have injuries, these things come up when you're competing and you're trying to maximize, and you can fix that. Right. And I tried everything. I did physio, I did massage, I did RMT, I did acupuncture, I did a bunch of Advil, I did new stretching, and nothing fixed it. And to the point where like my lifting radically changed. And then COVID happened, of course, over that. And that put a little bit of a pause on competitions too. And it's very strange to me knowing my total, so my squat, my bench, and my deadlift will never go up, because I can do bench press at this point. I can squat with some specialty bars, but I can't do a competition squat. And my goal is next year, I'm actually going back into competing, but just doing bench only because I don't have any issues with that.
Right.
But in reflection, it's very challenging knowing, hey, you know what? There's these periods I had between 2000 and I guess 2011 when I started competing, 2012, and 2018, when I had done my last full power competition, where admittedly I wasn't as focused, right? I squatted 480 pounds. I was so close to squatting 500 pounds. I needed one more training cycle, right? Never going to happen.
Yeah.
I pulled 551. I'm never going to pull 600, right? So those like lifetime goals in the back of my head, it's not even an option. There's no amount of drugs I can take at this point that's going to allow that. And what's really challenging for me with that is honestly looking back on it with regret, knowing, hey, I don't think it would have taken any more time out of my week. I think I just simply had to be more focused and knowing, really, 20 more pounds on my squat, 49 more pounds on my deadlift, not even 70 pounds on a total. But if I was just more focused for like 6 months, I could have done it. No doubt in my mind. And it's part of why I started coaching is, being able to help people break through those barriers and have that repeatable process where you don't have to worry about being too busy to figure out what the training details are. I'll help you find that, right? You don't have to worry about, well, is it this or is it that? I self-coached for a long time before I hired a coach. And I wasted a lot of time because I was like, I'm young. I don't care. I'm 16, 18, 20. And I've got a lot of time. It doesn't matter. Like I'll be 30 in a long time. I'll still be getting stronger at 30. It doesn't matter. And for a lot of people, that's the case where they have the gift of time, but you never know. And so in reflection, it hurts knowing that, if I was a little more focused, if I had dialed things in a bit more, largely in the same way as I help people now, I would have been able to actually achieve those lifetime goals and not have it decided for me that I won't. Because believe me, if there was something I could have done or can do at this point, I would have found it by now. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a damper. It's not the happiest thought, but it's for me, it's my why with coaching as well. I'm like, hey, you might have a lot of time, but you also might not. So if you're going to do it and this is something you care about, now's the time to really dial it in. Don't settle for, just kind of progressing. Optimize for what you have right now because you're healthy right now.
So what I'm hearing, Matt, is this, that when I made the decision, in 2009, that I would have to, in a very serious way, address the issue of diet, obviously, and what brought me this close to not making it through that life-saving operation, really, and then at the same time, as soon as I recovered from the physical, taking 20 centimeters out of my colon, actually, when I recovered the following year in 2009, I hired a coach. I knew that was required for me for two reasons. The one, to motivate it for me to make it a commitment that I would be at that gym when I said I would be there, because that's how I operate. And then the other one was that I have to understand my body, and although I do, but not in terms of pushing it to moving forward, and not and being aggressive enough that it will do that in a safe way, but at the same time, understanding my body better, or working with the best trainers that I can find that can help me in doing that. And I've done that. Over the last 15 years, I've had 3 or 4 different trainers, all of them very good, especially the one that I have now, extremely good, understands me, works with me, knows the objectives, and I listen to them well because I want to move forward. They know the objective, and at the same time, so that part works for me, and it has worked very, very well. And it allows me, even in my case, at 84, to still look at competing next year. starting in April in Victoria, actually, bodybuilding physique. And my category, I don't even think there is a category for me other than it's 55 years and older. And I'm usually the oldest one there. I already was, same as you did, when I competed for the provincials. It was in the big place in Vancouver with the roof structure, the Canada place, I believe. And
Yep.
there must have been 250 persons competing, male and female, bodybuilding physique and anything around that. And everybody belonged there. There was no question about that. They were all committed, and it takes a lot of effort, a lot of commitment to get to that level. And so I competed there, and it was an amazing feeling. Came in second in bodybuilding in my category, 55 and older, and I already was then 76 or so, 77, and 78 actually, and so most of them that I competed with could have been my grandchildren, really, for all in intents and purposes. In any event, so the point that I'm making is simply that once you know the objective, then make sure you follow quality of life, understand your body, your body extremely forgiving, really, but it only can take so much abuse, and you can do this at virtually any age, and then for me, what works as it does for you, I need to have a goal that I'm working towards. That motivates me, and I will get there. And everything is possible. And so and so that again brings me to the gym even today. And as I get closer to competition, work closer on my diet, get ready physically for the next competition, and I'm already mentally getting ready for that, and I love it. But it has another benefit. It makes me fit and healthy, and I can do all the things that I'm doing. I'm an author. I'm a very active podcaster, obviously, top 1% globally, and at the same time, 10 different companies, and I love all the stuff that I'm doing, even at nearly at 84, and still saying that there is nothing more important than quality of life. It's not the number, it's quality of life. And to obviously, that's why I wrote the book, Living Young, Dying Old. And, so, and kind of following that train and that objective is, I like it. I enjoy it. I enjoy, the staying fit physically, but also diet, very important. Actually, I do all the shopping, even for my wife and myself. And usually when I go to a grocery store, I do all the shopping on the outside in the store, on the outside part, because I don't want to have any of the processed foods, because I don't know what is in it. And so it's substantially based on plant diet. So I'm not vegan, but probably close to that. Or not, I'm a vegan, not like my wife is, so 90-10 or 80-20. And I like that. I enjoy that. And so, so the point is that you must have objective. Any age it is possible, and to stay the course for me, as it should be for many others, is quality of life is most important.
Yeah, I fully agree that the quality of life thing is important. Almost anybody can, push really hard and just, use exclusively willpower to make great progress for 2 months, but you got to live for a whole lot longer than 2 months, hopefully, right? I've got this one lifter that I love to share her story, because she's been lifting for about as long as some people are old that will listen to this podcast. So she is almost 60, and she has been lifting for 30 years now, officially. Powerlifting as well, not just for fitness, but competitively powerlifting for 30 years, which is a staggering amount of time. And what's crazy to me with this is I'll talk with some people who are 30 years old, right? As long as she's been lifting, that's when these people were born. And they'll come to me like, I just feel like I'm getting old. I don't think I'm like 25 anymore. I don't think I can progress anymore. I've been in this plateau with my lifting for 6 months, whatever it may be, right? But they ultimately feel like they're getting old. And I'm sitting there like, you're probably going to live for another 50, 60, 70 years. And you're saying you feel old right now? You're not even halfway there. And back to this lifter I've been talking about, let's call her Jane. Okay. So Jane's been lifting for 30 years, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, where as you've aged and as you've lifted for longer as well, progress is harder, right? You can't make the beginner gains anymore. So Jane just hit a national squat record, and that was a personal best for her, the heaviest squat she's ever done in her life. And I look at that and I'm like, well, the approach with her is very much the same as the approach that I would take with somebody who's 15, who's 30, who's 40, who's 50, who's 60, because the quality of life is important. You're going to have very brief periods where you focus on just making the most aggressive decisions to be as competitive as possible, but those are very small windows. And then you give yourself the room to recover and have it be a sustainable process. And that's why a lot of what I try to preach is you should be able to train for powerlifting if you want to compete in 5 hours a week or less, and compete with 5 hours or less per week of time. That's like Monday to Friday. You finish work at 5, you're done working out by 6. And then you have your whole evening to do everything. Like, most people are going to have that time if they're approaching things intelligently. And most people are going to be able to do that sustainably, because it's really when you start to get into these very long workouts and really high frequencies where you're spending 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a week in the gym that you start to feel like your quality of life gets impacted. You don't have time for a social life. You can't spend time with your spouse anymore. You have no time to spend with your friends. You're physically so sore you can't recover from all the work you're doing. And then it's no surprise that you're not progressing, because you're not happy, you have no energy, you're so sore, you're overdoing it. And it's ultimately that balance that you have to find of like, okay, where can I not just progress in the gym, but also feel like I have that balance and this integrates with the rest of my life? Because if you can do that, then at any age, I think you can powerlift, you can bodybuild, you can work out for general fitness, whatever it may be. The pillars that make them all work are the same. But getting that integration is very important, and we all only have so much time in a day. And having a way to make it fit for time is the key thing. And that's why I think 5 hours a week is kind of that sweet spot for most people.
Yeah. I think what you sharing with us and our guests watching us from around the world is that at any age you can do this, but what is important to get guidance or coaching at least during a period of time, so you understand that if you have objectives, that how do you get there, or how do you go about understanding it. But the other part about it is diet and all kinds of other things around it, that anytime you push yourself in for success in those areas, maybe bodybuilding, powerlifting, or whatever it is, to get guidance in terms of all the other things you do in life are important. And that's why coaching is so important. The other part that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit with all the guests that are watching us, because I believe you are probably in your mid-20s.
29.
29. So
the shave makes me look younger.
Yeah. So okay. Well, there you go. So I'm probably nearly 50 years older than you are, or something like that. But what I like about your story is that I was watching something a little bit going back to the beginning of when we started our interaction, is that I saw something on a US television station, don't know which one, but in any event, saying that 75% of the people that work in the United States, and I believe Canada is the same, do not like their jobs. And probably 70% of the 75% that don't like their job are looking for another job. And I do a lot of presenting and giving keynote presentations and speaking in particular to younger people, either in high schools, colleges, or universities. A lot of times I ask them, so after you're done here, where do you want to go with your career? And a lot of them say, I don't know, I don't know. I said, it's so important that you get a feeling of direction. And this comes directly again to your start at 18 when you wanted to become a cook and you had the dreams of becoming all kinds of things other than working 100 hours a week at $5 an hour. And so I say to them, if you want to be a truck driver, talk to some truck drivers and ask them, what's your job all about? What do you do? What are the pluses? What are the minuses? What are the benefits? Or if you want to be a contractor, build houses, talk to some contractor and say, how do I go about getting there? What are the challenges along the way? What are the benefits? And so that you understand what they are. Or if you want to, in your case, you want to become a cook and an owner of restaurants. What does that involve to get there? How do you go about it? What is the possibility of getting there? And how do you go about doing all of this? Or you want to be an accountant, a lawyer, or a doc, or for that matter, an entrepreneur of different sorts. Talk to them, because they all love to talk to people that say, I'm interested in knowing what made you successful in what you do. How do you go about it? What are the benefits? And so that you understand, so it gives you a direction. And I believe what you told me and our guests watching us from around the world is that you didn't fully understand that about initially when you became a cook, and then you talked to this one individual that changed direction for you. That's how important it is. And I felt I have to write a book about that. So I wrote a book about it, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, and saying that I started working when I was 13 in Holland. Now I'm 84. So I've been working for 71 years and saying, hey, John, are you living the dream? I say, I sure am. Still every day I live the dream. And so my foundation is that attitude. I'm virtually always positive, no matter what the challenges are. I know they will get better today. If they are challenged today, they will be better tomorrow. Passion, to me, very important. Whatever I do, I give it 125%. Work ethic is another one that's important for me, even now still. I work harder than anybody. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And I love what I'm doing. And so that's important for me. And then the other part, I'm also an author, and I want to share another book with you where we may have similarities, and that has made me who I am and changed my life in a number of directions. And I wrote a book about that. And the title of the book is ADHD Unlocked. And so I'm ADHD, and I call it a superpower. And I share that with many, many people, and especially young people, where today I hear about a lot of people that say, I'm ADHD, but I've never told anybody about it because it has a stigma attached to it. I believe it's a superpower. And a lot of people say to me, how do you do all the things that you do? You have 10 different companies, you an author, you've written 5, 6 books, and then you do all the podcasting and do all this other stuff. How do you do it? I say ADHD. That's how I do it.
Yeah, kind of the having 100 things to work on is almost the thing that you need, right?
Exactly. I love the challenges, and so
I get too bored if there's not a whole lot of things to work on. If it's easy, I'm like, this is no good.
exactly. So before we go, Matt, share with us your last thoughts about fitness, health, and obviously experiences that you have, and you still got a lifetime ahead of you. Share some thoughts with us for the people watching it around the world.
Yeah. So it's a good one. So this would be my advice with this. If you're lifting weights right now and you're finding, okay, those beginner gains are kind of gone, and you're noticing your motivation, your passion for this thing that's been so productive for you up until this point starting to wane off, because the progress can be very addictive, but when you stop seeing the progress, even though you're putting in the same work, it can be very challenging to stay engaged with it. There's a couple things I'd recommend. One is, instead of thinking about what can I do that's more to get more progress, right? Look at it and what can I do that's less? Because often we fall into this trap of doing more and more and more, and then you end up injured, and then it's even worse, right? It's not to say that more is never the answer, but oftentimes you need to actually reduce how much effort you're getting or how hard you're trying to push, so that you can actually listen to your body instead of just using more as the answer for everything. And that goes with your lifting. I'm sure you've noticed this with business as well, but within the context of lifting, that would be the first thing I'd invite. And the other thing I can provide just from a value standpoint is I actually post quite often on Instagram, just at Stronger YOUPT. And I put a lot of information in there on how you can add 80 to 200 pounds to your total with less than 5 hours a week.
Have you got a website that people can contact you or share with the things that you're doing?
Yeah. So everything is linked actually on my Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me. My website is on there, all of that, but it's the same as my Instagram, just Stronger YOUPT as in personal training. And everything is there. My blog, my best way to reach me is there. Educational content, it's all there.
And so then the final part that I get from your conversation and my own experience is that no matter what you want to pursue, may it be for fitness, may it be for health, may it be for exercise or physical fitness, or for that matter, business, coaching, very, very important. Always try to find what made other people successful and how did you go about doing it. And anytime you try to push it, always dream big, but once you do, make sure you get guidance along the way for all the reasons that we just talked about.
100%, fully agree.
Matt, it was a privilege and a pleasure to have you on my podcast. And now you can go. It's still early for you, 10 o'clock in the morning. You have to go outside and shovel snow now.
Yeah, right on that. It's that and then a little bit of a workout, and we'll roll from there. Thank you so much for having me on, John. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Matt. Take care.